October 12, 1943, 3,000 feet above the English Channel. The fuel gauge reads 0. Lieutenant Elliot Garrison's hands remain steady on the control stick of his P-47 Thunderbolt. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, which has roared for 3 hours straight, coughs once, then again, then dies. Silence. Not complete silence. The wind still screams through the damaged canopy. The propeller continues to windmill uselessly. But the deep, reassuring rumble that has been Garrison's constant companion for 312 combat hours is gone. Just wind now, and gravity. The gray water of the English Channel rushes up to meet him at 90 knots. Whitecaps visible. Surface conditions moderate. Water temperature approximately 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Survival time in that water is 20 minutes before hypothermia stops the heart. Garrison knows these numbers. He has committed them to memory along with dozens of other statistics that might mean the difference between life and death. Engine specifications, fuel consumption rates, ammunition counts, glide ratios, stall speeds, the numbers that define the narrow margin between coming home and becoming another name on the casualty list. His aircraft bearing the name Iron Sentinel, stenciled below the cockpit, has 26 kill markers painted on the fuselage. 26 German aircraft destroyed, 72 missions flown, 312 hours of combat time over occupied Europe. Not one bomber lost under his escort. Not one. Until today, that statistic might hold, or it might not. The mathematics are uncertain now. The fuel is gone. The engine is dead. The water is very close. Garrison pushes the nose down slightly to maintain airspeed. The P-47 handles like a brick when unpowered, but it will glide if you know what you are doing. And Garrison knows what he is doing. He has practiced this scenario a dozen times. Emergency procedures, ditching techniques, water landing angles. He just never expected to use them like this. 400 yards ahead, he can see the other aircraft. A B-17 Flying Fortress tail, number 42-3067, settling toward the same cold water. Smoke trails from 2 dead engines. The aircraft lists slightly to the left, asymmetric drag, pulling it off course. Inside that aircraft are 9 men. 9 men who would be dead right now if Garrison had made a different choice 30 minutes ago. No, not 30 minutes ago. 4 hours ago, back at Thorpe Abbott's airfield when this all began. The mission had launched at 0600 hours. 320 B-17 Flying Fortresses, the largest daylight rate of the war to that point. Target ball-bearing factories in Schweinfurt, Germany. Intelligence promised light resistance. The factories were critical to German war production. Destroy them, and you cripple the Luftwaffe's ability to maintain its fighter force. Intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. The Luftwaffe met them with over 400 fighters. Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf 190s rose from a dozen airfields across occupied France and Germany. The sky became a slaughterhouse. Bombers fell in flames. Men tumbled through space parachutes blossoming white against blue. Debris rained down across the countryside below. The P-47 Thunderbolts did what they could. They fought desperately, burning fuel at maximum rate trying to protect the bombers. But their range was limited. At the German border, they had to turn back. Fuel tanks nearly empty. Return to base. Rearm. Refuel. Wait for the bombers to come home. If the bombers came home, Garrison had landed at Thorpe Abbott's at 1300 hours. Mission number 72 complete. His crew chief counted the holes in his aircraft. 14, 2 20mm cannon strikes that had failed to penetrate the armor plate behind his seat. 12 7.92mm machine gun hits scattered across the wings and fuselage. Nothing critical, nothing that could not be patched. Garrison climbed down from the cockpit. His legs were stiff. 3 hours in the cramped confines of a fighter cockpit at high altitude, breathing pure oxygen through a rubber mask, watching for enemy fighters, calculating angles and speeds and distances. It took a physical toll. He walked to the operations building. His flight suit was soaked with sweat despite the cold. His hands shook slightly, adrenaline wearing off, combat fatigue setting in. He needed food, coffee, rest. Instead, he got the casualty list. 47 B-17s missing, 470 men. Some would make it back. Damaged aircraft struggling home alone. Some would bail out over France. A few might evade capture, make contact with the resistance, escape to Spain. Most would become prisoners of war. Many were already dead. Garrison scanned the list. Names, squadron designations, aircraft numbers. He knew some of these crews, had escorted them on previous missions, had shared drinks with them at the officers' club, had listened to their stories about home, about wives and girlfriends and children they had never met. Then he saw it. Captain Russell Hartwick, 100th Bomb Group, aircraft 42367, missing. Garrison stopped, read the entry again. Hartwick. He knew that name, knew that man, not well. They had spoken perhaps 3 times. Once at the officers' club 2 weeks ago, Hartwick had been writing a letter home. His wife was 7 months pregnant, a son the doctors thought. Due in January, Hartwick had shown Garrison the photograph he carried. A young woman, dark hair, smiling at the camera. Pretty, hopeful, waiting. Garrison remembered what Hartwick had said that night. Just casual conversation. The kind of talk men share when they are far from home and uncertain if they will ever return. If something happens to me, Hartwick had said, I hope someone will tell my son I tried, that I did my duty, that I didn't run. Garrison had nodded, offered the expected reassurances. You will be fine. You will make it home. You will see your son born. The lies men tell each other to make the fear manageable. Now Hartwick was missing, somewhere over occupied Europe, dead, captured, or struggling to survive in a damaged aircraft with a crew depending on him to bring them home. Garrison stood in the operations room. Around him, other pilots reviewed the mission reports, discussed tactics, analyzed what went wrong, planned for tomorrow. The machinery of war grinding forward, indifferent to individual tragedy. Garrison thought about Hartwick's wife, about the child who would be born in 2 months, about a boy who might grow up never knowing his father, never hearing his voice, never learning what kind of man he had been. He thought about his own brothers, Vincent, 18 years old, Robert, 15, Charles, 12, back home in New Jersey working the farm, waiting for the war to end. Garrison was the oldest, the one who had volunteered first, the one who was supposed to protect them by helping to win this war quickly before his younger brothers were old enough to be drafted. Vincent was already old enough. His draft notice would come soon. Within months, Vincent would be in uniform. Within a year, he might be here in England, climbing into a bomber or a fighter flying into the same hell that had consumed Hartwick, unless the war ended first, unless men like Garrison did their jobs. Garrison looked at the casualty list again. 47 aircraft, 470 men. The numbers were staggering. But numbers were abstract, names were not. Hartwick was not a number. He was a man with a wife and an unborn child. He was someone's brother, someone's son, someone's friend, and he was missing. Garrison walked to the flight line. His crew chief, Sergeant Malone, was still working on the P-47, patching holes, checking systems, preparing the aircraft for the next mission. Malone, Garrison said, how long until she's ready? Malone looked up from his work. Tomorrow morning, Lieutenant. Need to replace hydraulic lines, patch these holes proper. She'll be good as new by 0600. I need her ready now. Malone straightened, studied Garrison's face. Sir. Now, Sergeant, fuel her up. Full internal tanks. Check the guns. I'm going back out. Back out? Malone's voice carried disbelief. Sir, you just flew 3 hours of combat. You're off duty. You're scheduled for stand down tomorrow. I'm aware of the schedule. Lieutenant, you're exhausted. You need rest. I need this aircraft ready to fly. Now. Malone stared at him, then nodded slowly. Yes, sir. Give me 30 minutes. Garrison walked to the operations building, found the duty officer. Lieutenant Commander Phillips, a desk officer who had never flown combat and never would. Request permission to fly a search and rescue mission, Garrison said. Phillips looked up from his paperwork. Search and rescue for whom? Stragglers from the Schweinfurt raid. Aircraft that might be limping back alone. They'll need escort. The mission ended 2 hours ago, Lieutenant. Any aircraft still in the air are either already back or they're not coming back. Some might be damaged, flying slow. They could still make it if they have fighter protection. Phillips shook his head. You've already flown 1 mission today. You're not authorized for a second sortie. I'm requesting authorization. Request denied. You're exhausted. You'll be a danger to yourself and anyone else in the air. Garrison leaned forward, placed both hands flat on Phillips' desk. Captain Russell Hartwick, 100th Bomb Group, aircraft 42367, last seen over Germany, 1 engine out under fighter attack. He has a wife who is 7 months pregnant, a son due in January. That son will need a father. I'm going to make sure he has one. Phillips met his gaze. Lieutenant, I understand your concern, but 1 fighter searching hundreds of miles of enemy territory is not going to request permission to fly, sir. Silence stretched between them. Phillips studied Garrison's face, saw something there, determination. Or perhaps something beyond determination, something that could not be argued with or reasoned away. If I authorize this, Philip said slowly, and you don't come back, I'll have to explain to your family why I let you fly a second mission in one day. Why I let you go back out when you should have been resting. If I don't come back, Garrison said, tell them I was doing my job. Tell them no man gets left behind. Tell them that's what we do here. Phillips picked up a pen, signed a form, pushed it across the desk. 1 hour. You have authorization for 1 hour over enemy territory. After that, fuel state will force you back anyway. Understood. Understood, sir. Thank you. Garrison took the form, walked back to the flight line. The P-47 was ready. Malone had worked quickly. Holes patched, fuel tanks full, all 8 50 caliber machine guns loaded with fresh belts of ammunition. 425 rounds per gun, 3,400 total. Approximately 34 seconds of continuous fire if he held the trigger down. He would not hold the trigger down. Fire discipline was critical. Short bursts, 2 seconds maximum. Make every bullet count. 34 seconds could become a dozen separate engagements if he was careful. Garrison climbed into the cockpit, settled into the seat, fastened the harness. The familiar routine. Throttle controls, mixture lever, propeller pitch, fuel selector, magnetos, battery. The checklist was automatic now. 700 flights, 312 combat hours. His hands moved without conscious thought. Engine start. The R-2800 coughed, caught, roared to life. 2,000 horsepower shaking the airframe. 18 cylinders firing in sequence. The sound was deafening even through the leather helmet. But it was a good sound, a sound that meant life. Power, the ability to fight, the ability to save. Garrison taxied to the runway, received clearance from the tower, advanced the throttle. The P-47 accelerated. Tail came up. Airspeed indicator, climbing. 80 knots, 90, 100. At 110 knots, the aircraft lifted smoothly from the runway. Gear up, flaps up, climb power. Heading 135 degrees toward France, toward Germany, toward wherever Hartwick might be, if he was still alive. The English Channel passed beneath him. The coast of France appeared on the horizon. Enemy territory. Every mile he flew deeper into occupied Europe was a mile he would have to fly back. And fuel did not care about intentions. Fuel was mathematics. Consumption rate times time equals quantity. When the quantity reached zero, the engine stopped. Simple, inevitable, unforgiving. Garrison checked his fuel gauges. He had departed with full internal tanks, no external drop tanks. Those would have extended his range, but they also created drag and reduced speed. For a search mission, he needed speed and maneuverability more than endurance. Full internal fuel gave him approximately 2 hours of flight time at cruise settings. Less if he engaged in combat. Much less if he used maximum power. Every decision he made would affect that calculation. Every turn, every climb, every burst of gunfire. He flew inland, eyes scanning constantly. Left, right, above, below, 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. The systematic scan pattern drilled into every fighter pilot from day one of training. The sky was empty and the sky was full. An enemy could appear from nowhere. A friendly could vanish in seconds. Vigilance was survival. 20 minutes into enemy territory, he saw nothing. Blue sky, white clouds, green countryside below. Peaceful, beautiful, deceptive. Somewhere down there, German soldiers moved supplies. Anti-aircraft batteries tracked his aircraft. Fighter bases prepared to scramble interceptors. He was alone in their sky. One American fighter deep in occupied France. A target, a threat, an opportunity for some German pilot to add another kill to his tally. 30 minutes, still nothing. Fuel gauge showing 1 hour, 30 minutes remaining. He would need to turn back soon. The mathematics were becoming critical. He had perhaps 10 more minutes of search time before the fuel situation became dangerous. Then he saw them. Far ahead, perhaps 12 miles, a formation of dark specks against the sky. He adjusted course, pushed the throttle forward. The R-2800 responded immediately. Speed increased. Distance closed. The specks resolved into aircraft. Bombers. B-17s, a formation of perhaps 18 aircraft heading west toward England, some with visible damage, engines trailing smoke, but flying together. Mutual protection. Garrison keyed his radio. Big friends, this is Iron Sentinel. I have you visual. Any stragglers need assistance. Static. Then a voice tired but professional. Iron Sentinel, This is Big Friend, lead. We're holding formation, but we've got 2 damaged birds that might fall behind. Appreciate the company. Copy that, Big Friend. I'll stay with anyone who needs escort. Garrison throttled back, matched speed with the formation, 17,000 feet. The bombers were descending gradually, trying to reach lower altitude where the air was warmer and denser, better for damaged engines. But lower altitude also meant less glide distance if another engine failed. Every decision in combat was a trade-off. Risk against risk, no perfect choices. He flew above and behind the formation, weaving in a protective S pattern, watching for threats. His fuel gauge showed 1 hour 15 minutes. The bombers were 90 miles from England. At their current speed of 160 miles per hour, they needed 33 minutes to reach safety. Garrison would have fuel for over an hour. The mathematics looked favorable. He could escort them all the way home. Everyone would make it. Then one of the B-17s began to fall behind, the aircraft on the left edge of the formation. Tail number 423067. Number 3 engine trailing black smoke. The propeller windmilling uselessly. No power from that engine. Hartwick's aircraft. Garrison keyed his radio. Big Friend, 3067, this is Iron Sentinel. I see your engine trouble. What's your status? Silence for a moment, then a familiar voice. Calm, professional, hiding fear beneath training. Iron Sentinel, this is Captain Hartwick. We've lost number 3 engine. Can't maintain formation speed. The others need to press on. We'll catch up. The formation continued west. Standard procedure. 1 damaged aircraft could not compromise the safety of 17 others. Hartwick understood this. His crew understood this. But understanding did not make it easier. Hartwick's B-17 dropped behind. The gap widened. 300 yards. 400. 500. Alone now, separated from the protective firepower of the formation. A straggler. And stragglers were what the Luftwaffe hunted. Garrison checked his fuel. 1 hour 15 minutes remaining. Hartwick's aircraft was making 140 miles per hour on 3 engines. England was 90 miles away. At that speed, Hartwick needed 38 minutes of flight time to reach the coast. Garrison had more than enough fuel. He could stay with Hartwick all the way home. The mathematics worked. Barely, but they worked. He descended to Hartwick's altitude, moved into escort position, 400 yards to the right and slightly above. Perfect coverage. Big Friend, 3067, this is Iron Sentinel. I've got you covered. Not going anywhere. Hartwick's voice came back, relief evident despite the professional tone. Iron Sentinel, I appreciate that, but check your fuel state. You can't have much left after that long search. I've got enough to see you home. You're sure? Positive. Just keep flying straight and level. I'll handle anything that comes at us. Inside the bomber, Captain Russell Hartwick allowed himself one moment of hope. The fighter pilot who had come back to find him, who was staying when he could have turned back, who was risking his life for 9 men he barely knew. Lieutenant Franklin Aldridge, the co-pilot, worked frantically at his station, trying to restart engine 3. No success. The engine was dead. Cannon fire during the bomb run had shredded internal components. Oil pressure 0, temperature gauge pegged. The engine would never run again. Worse, the hydraulic system was failing. Pressure dropping steadily. Without hydraulics, critical systems would fail. Gun turrets could not rotate. Bomb bay doors hung partially open, creating drag. Landing gear would have to be manually cranked down when they reached England. If they reached England. Aldridge was a logical man, an engineer before the war. He understood mathematics, numbers, probabilities, and the numbers told him they were in serious trouble. 3 engines instead of 4, reduced thrust, reduced speed, increased drag from the dead propeller, and damaged cowling. Every mile they flew was a struggle against physics. He keyed the intercom. Skipper, hydraulics are at 40%, still dropping. We're going to lose them completely within 20 minutes. Hartwick acknowledged. Understood. Start preparing for manual operation of all systems. We'll need that when we land. In the radio room, Staff Sergeant Silas Murphy monitored the equipment. He was 21 years old, an electrician before the war. Good with his hands, better with machines than people. But he had learned to joke, to laugh, to keep morale up when things got bad. Things were definitely bad now. He keyed the intercom. Skipper, that fighter pilot out there just saved our lives. We were dead meat without escort. Hartwick's voice came back through the headset. He did sigh. Let's make sure we don't waste what he's giving us. Everyone stay sharp. Check your stations. Report any new problems immediately. In the ball turret beneath the fuselage, Sergeant Nathaniel Brewster scanned the sky below. The ball turret was the worst position on a B-17. Cramped, isolated, a plexiglass sphere with two 50 caliber machine guns, no room to move, no parachute, no way to escape quickly if the aircraft went down. Brewster was 20 years old, from a coal mining family in Pennsylvania, 6 siblings, father killed in a mine collapse in 1941. Nathaniel had joined the Army Air Forces to escape the mines, to earn money for his family, to do something that mattered. Now he was suspended in a glass ball beneath a damaged bomber, flying over enemy territory hoping they made it home. His left shoulder ached. Shrapnel from the earlier attack. Not serious, just painful. He had not reported it, did not want to worry the crew. They had enough problems. Above and to the right, Garrison maintained his vigil, eyes constantly scanning, left, right, high, low, looking for threats. The Luftwaffe would be searching for stragglers, would be vectoring fighters toward any isolated bombers. It was only a matter of time. 15 minutes passed. The French countryside rolled beneath them. Small villages, farm fields, roads where German trucks moved supplies. Enemy territory all the way to the water. Garrison checked his fuel. 1 hour remaining. Distance to English coast 76 miles. Time required at current speed 32 minutes. Surplus 28 minutes. The mathematics still worked. Tight, but workable. He could escort Hartwick to the Channel, maybe even across it, maybe all the way to England, maybe. Then 3 more Messerschmitt Bf-109s appeared. They came from the south, 3 aircraft in loose formation at 18,000 feet. Garrison spotted them at 6 miles distance, dark specks against scattered clouds. Moving fast, fragile, converging on an intercept course with Hartwick's bomber. The Germans had been waiting, watching. Radio discipline among Luftwaffe units was excellent. When a damaged bomber fell behind, word spread quickly. Fighters from multiple bases would vector toward the target, like wolves sensing wounded prey. Garrison keyed his radio. Big friend, 3267 bandits approaching. 3 Me-109s, 5 o'clock high. Stay steady, I've got them. Hartwick's response was tight, controlled. Copy Iron Sentinel. We see them. Garrison banked right, climbing to meet the threat. His fuel gauge showed 58 minutes remaining. The mathematics were becoming critical now. Every burst of gunfire consumed ammunition. Every combat maneuver burned fuel at accelerated rates. The numbers were converging toward an inevitable conclusion. But numbers could wait. Right now, 3 German pilots were lining up gun sights on Hartwick's aircraft, on 9 men who had already survived 3 hours of hell and wanted desperately to see England again. The lead Me-109 pilot saw Garrison climbing toward them and immediately adjusted tactics. Instead of diving directly at the bomber, the Germans split formation. One continued toward the B-17 from the right. The other 2 broke left positioning to engage Garrison from his flank. Standard Luftwaffe tactics. Divide and conquer. Force the escort to choose between protecting the bomber and defending himself. Either way, the bomber became vulnerable. Garrison chose offense. He ignored the 2 fighters moving to his left and focused on the one approaching Hartwick's aircraft. Speed was critical now. The P-47 accelerated rapidly in the dive. 400 miles per hour, 420. The airspeed indicator, needle climbing. Engine roaring at maximum power. Fuel consumption doubling, tripling. The German pilot saw him coming, tried to turn inside Garrison's attack angle. The Me-109 was lighter, more maneuverable at lower speeds. In a turning fight, the German aircraft held advantages. But Garrison was not turning, he was diving. Using speed and mass, the P-47 weighed 17,500 pounds fully loaded. When committed to a high-speed attack, physics took over. Momentum, energy, inertia. At 800 yards, Garrison opened fire. Short burst, 2 seconds. The 850 caliber machine guns erupted simultaneously. The recoil was noticeable even in an 8-ton aircraft. Spent shell casings streamed from the wing gun ports. Tracer rounds marked the path through space. Most rounds missed, but enough connected. The Me-109's tail section shredded. Pieces of metal tore away. The rudder disintegrated. The aircraft yawed violently to the right. The German pilot fought for control, almost recovered. Then Garrison fired again. Another 2-second burst. This time the rounds walked across the fuselage. From tail to cockpit, the canopy exploded into fragments. The propeller flew apart. The engine erupted in white smoke. The Me-109 rolled inverted and fell away, spinning. The pilot managed to bail out. His parachute blossomed. He would survive to become a prisoner of war. 800 rounds expended in 4 seconds of firing. 3,400 minus 800, 2,600 rounds remaining. Approximately 26 seconds of firing time. Garrison pulled hard on the stick. High G recovery, blood draining from his head, vision graying at the edges. He tightened his abdominal muscles, forced blood back to his brain, stayed conscious, leveled out at 14,000 feet. The other two Me-109s were on him now, both firing. 20mm cannon shells and 7.92mm machine gun rounds streaking past his canopy. Most missed. 2 hit. Cannon shells struck the left wing. 1 machine gun bullet spiderwebbed the armored glass window screen, but the P-47 absorbed the damage. Self-sealing fuel tanks prevented leaks. Armor plate behind the seat stopped rounds that might have killed him. The aircraft shuddered but kept flying. Garrison reversed hard left. The 2 German fighters overshot. They were going too fast, committed too deeply to their attack run. Now they were in front of him, vulnerable. He selected the closer one, lined up the shot, pressed the trigger. 2-second burst. The remaining 2,600 rounds concentrated on a single target at 400 yards convergence. The Me-109's left wing root failed catastrophically. The wing folded upward, then separated completely from the fuselage. The fighter tumbled wildly. The pilot ejected immediately. Smart. Another parachute blossoming white. 1,600 rounds expended. 2,600 minus 1,600. 1,000 rounds remaining. 10 seconds of firing time. The third Me-109 pilot had seen enough. 2 wingmen gone in less than 5 minutes. The American pilot was too skilled, too aggressive, too dangerous. He broke off, turned east, departed. Garrison watched him go, then checked his instruments. Fuel gauge, 42 minutes remaining. Ammunition, 1,000 rounds. 10 seconds. Engine running, rough. Temperature gauge climbing. One of those cannon hits must have damaged a cooling line. He keyed the radio. Big friend, 3067 bandits have departed. You're clear. Hartwick's voice carried relief and something else, concern. Copy Iron Sentinel, outstanding shooting. But what's your fuel state? Garrison glanced at the gauge again. 42 minutes. Hartwick's B-17 was making 140 miles per hour on 3 engines. England was now 76 miles away. At current speed, 32 minutes of flight time to the coast. 42 minutes of fuel. 32 minutes to safety. 10 minutes surplus. The mathematics worked. Barely. But they worked. Fuel is sufficient, Garrison said. I'll get you home. It was technically true, if nothing else went wrong, if the engine temperature stabilized, if no more German fighters appeared, if the wind stayed favorable, if a dozen other variables aligned perfectly. Big if. The bomber continued west, altitude bleeding away slowly, 16,000 feet. 15,000. The damaged engine created drag. The asymmetric thrust from the 3 functioning engines required constant correction on the control yoke. Hartwick was fighting the aircraft every second. Muscles straining, concentration absolute. Garrison stayed close, weaving above and behind the bomber in his escort pattern. His engine temperature gauge continued to climb. The coolant leak was worsening. 340 degrees, 350. Red line temperature was 375 degrees. He was approaching the danger zone. 20 minutes passed. The French coast appeared ahead. Beyond it, the English Channel. 35 miles of cold gray water. Beyond that, England. Safety. Home. Garrison's fuel gauge showed 36 minutes remaining. Distance to English coast, 58 miles at Hartwick's speed. Time required 25 minutes. The mathematics still worked. 11 minutes surplus, enough to make it across the channel. Maybe even reach an airfield on the English side. Maybe. His engine temperature hit 360 degrees, 15 degrees from redline. The needle was still climbing. At 375 degrees, the engine would begin to fail. Pistons would expand from heat. Cylinders would warp. Metal would grind against metal. Then seize. Stop. Permanently. Garrison reduced power slightly, leaned the mixture. Anything to reduce heat generation. But flying slower meant the escort pattern consumed more time, more fuel. The mathematics were working against him from every angle. Then everything changed. At 14,000 feet, 28 miles from the French coast, Hartwick's bomber shuddered violently. Black smoke erupted from the number 2 engine, the left inboard engine, flames visible at the cowling, bright orange against gray metal. Aldridge's voice cut through the intercom, sharp, urgent. Engine fire number 2, fire in number 2. Hartwick's hands moved automatically. Fire suppression procedures drilled into muscle memory. Throttle to idle, mixture to cutoff, fuel selector off, feather the propeller, then the critical decision fire suppression system. Activating CO2 on number 2, Hartwick announced calmly. He pulled the red T-handle. Carbon dioxide flooded the engine compartment. A single-shot system. One chance. If it did not extinguish the fire immediately, they would have to bail out. A bomber with an engine fire was a flying bomb. Fuel tanks were in the wings, close to the engines. Fire could spread, tanks could explode. The aircraft could disintegrate in midair. 10 seconds. 15. The flames flickered, diminished, disappeared. The fire was out, but the engine was dead. Hartwick stared at his instrument panel. 4 engines at takeoff. Now 2. Number 3 destroyed by cannon fire hours ago. Number 2 destroyed by fire. Only number 1 and number 4 still running. The 2 outboard engines. Maximum thrust 2,000 horsepower each. Just barely enough to keep a 65,000-pound aircraft in the air. Barely. The bomber's nose dropped. Airspeed increased to maintain lift with reduced power. Altitude decreased at 300 feet per minute. 14,000 feet. 13,700. 13,400. The aircraft was falling out of the sky. Aldridge ran calculations in his head. 2 engines. Reduced power meant reduced speed. Speed was now 120 miles per hour, maybe less, and descending continuously. He keyed the intercom. His voice was steady, professional, but the words carried weight. "Skipper, we're not going to make it to England. We need to consider alternatives." Hartwick knew he was right. The mathematics were undeniable. 58 miles to the coast, 120 miles per hour, 29 minutes of flight time, descending at 300 feet per minute. Current altitude, 13,000 feet. In 29 minutes, they would descend 8,700 feet. Final altitude, 4,300 feet. Not enough. They needed at least 8,000 feet to cross the channel with sufficient margin for error. They would be down to 3,000 feet by the time they reached the English coast. Too low. Too slow. Too damaged. They would have to ditch in the channel or bail out over France. Hartwick made his decision. Crew prepare for possible water landing. We'll try to make it to the channel. Better chance of rescue than bailing out over occupied territory, but be ready for anything. The crew acknowledged. Voices tight, professional, scared but controlled. Murphy secured the radio equipment, began gathering emergency supplies. Life vests, flares, first aid kit. In the top turret, Sergeant Hayes Donovan climbed down, prepared for emergency exit procedures. In the waist, Corporal Graham Finch checked the life raft storage compartments. And in the ball turret, Nathaniel Brewster tried to rotate his position. The turret needed to be in the exit position before ditching. Otherwise, he would be trapped when the aircraft hit water. He activated the hydraulic controls. Nothing happened. The turret did not move. He tried again. Still nothing. The hydraulics were gone. Pressure had dropped to 0. He reached for the manual crank, the emergency backup, a hand-operated mechanism that could rotate the turret mechanically when hydraulics failed. He inserted the crank handle, tried to turn it. The mechanism was jammed, would not budge. Something in the hydraulic system had seized. The manual crank was useless. Brewster was trapped in the ball turret. When the aircraft ditched, the turret would be the first part to hit the water. The impact would crush it, compress it, destroy it. With Brewster still inside, he keyed the intercom. His voice was calm, too calm. "Skipper, ball turret, hydraulics are out. Manual crank is jammed. I can't rotate to exit position." Silence for 3 seconds. Everyone understood what that meant. Aldridge spoke first. "Can you force the crank, use leverage?" "Negative. I've been trying for 5 minutes. It won't move. Something internal is broken." Hartwick's mind raced through options, solutions. There had to be something. "Crew, anyone have ideas? How do we get Brewster out of that turret?" Silence. No one had an answer. The ball turret was designed to be rotated using hydraulic pressure. The manual crank was the backup. There was no tertiary system, no emergency procedure beyond those 2 methods. No solution. Brewster spoke again, his voice steady despite the death sentence he had just received. "Skipper, don't worry about me. Focus on getting everyone else ready for ditching. I'll figure something out." It was a lie. Brewster knew he was not figuring anything out. He was trapped. When the aircraft hit water, he would die, but he was not going to make his crewmates feel worse about it. He was going to face death with dignity. Above the bomber, Garrison had heard the entire exchange on the radio frequency. He had watched engine number 2 erupt in flames, watched the fire suppression, watched the bomber begin its descent toward the channel. Now he understood the full situation. Hartwick's crew was facing a water landing. One man was trapped in a position that guaranteed his death, and the bomber was still 58 miles from the coast, descending 300 feet per minute. They would be in the water long before reaching England. Garrison checked his own gauges. Fuel 28 minutes remaining. Engine temperature 370 degrees, 5 degrees from red line. The coolant leak was critical now. The engine could seize at any moment. Distance to English coast 58 miles. At Hartwick's reduced speed of 120 miles per hour, that was 29 minutes of flight time. Garrison had 28 minutes of fuel. He would run out 1 mile short of land. The mathematics were brutal, simple, final. He could turn back now, fly east, return to France, find a field, crash land, survive as a prisoner of war for the duration. But survive. Or he could stay with Hartwick, escort the bomber to the channel, ditch alongside them when his fuel ran out, increase their rescue chances by having 2 crash sites close together, 2 sets of emergency signals, better visibility for rescue aircraft. But that meant deliberately giving up his aircraft, his life, his future, all for a possibility, not even a certainty, just a possibility that staying together might marginally improve their odds. Garrison thought about his brothers, Vincent 18, Robert 15, Charles 12. If he died today, who would watch over them? Who would make sure they stayed safe? Who would come home to tell them about the war, about sacrifice, about what mattered? Then he thought about Hartwick's unborn son, about a boy who would never know his father unless someone helped that father survive, about 9 men in a bomber who had done their duty and deserved to go home, about Nathaniel Brewster, 20 years old, trapped, doomed, unless someone changed the mathematics. The decision was simpler than Garrison expected. There was no real choice. Never had been. From the moment he took off from Thorpe Abbotts, this outcome had been inevitable. The numbers had been converging toward this point all along. He keyed his radio. Big friend, 36-7, this is Iron Sentinel. I'm staying with you all the way. When you ditch, I'll ditch nearby. Better rescue chances that way. Static, then Hartwick's voice, shocked. Negative, Iron Sentinel. You still have fuel to make it back to France. Glide inland. You'll survive as a prisoner. Not leaving you, big friend. That's insane. You'll die in that water. Maybe, maybe not. But 9 men definitely die if I leave. No man gets left behind. That's the code I live by. Aldridge's voice cut in. Iron Sentinel, listen to reason. You've already saved us twice. You've done enough. Turn back while you still can. Can't do that, Garrison said. His voice was calm, final, the decision made. My brothers are back home. They'd be ashamed if I abandoned 9 men to save myself. Wouldn't you do the same, Captain? Hartwick did not answer immediately, because they both knew the answer. Yes, he would do the same. The bomber continued its descent. 12,000 feet, 11,000, 10,000. The French coast passed beneath them. Green fields gave way to gray water. The English Channel. 35 miles of cold ocean between France and England. Between death and survival. Between war and home. Garrison descended with them. His engine temperature gauge was redline now. 375 degrees. Any moment the engine would seize. He reduced power to absolute minimum. Kept the aircraft flying, barely. Inside the bomber, the crew worked frantically. Murphy gathered all emergency equipment. Donovan helped Finch prepare the life rafts. Aldridge began manual gear extension procedures in case they made it to England after all. And Brewster, suspended in his plexiglass prison beneath the aircraft, made peace with his death. He thought about his mother, his 5 siblings, the money he sent home every month. They depended on that money. What would they do now? He thought about his father, crushed under tons of coal, dead at 43. Nathaniel had joined the military to escape that fate, to avoid dying in darkness. Instead, he was going to drown in darkness. The irony was bitter. Altitude 9,000 feet, 8,000, 7,000. The bomber was descending faster now, struggling to maintain even minimum airspeed. The 2 remaining engines screamed at maximum power. But maximum power from 2 engines was not enough. Garrison's fuel gauge touched 23 minutes. His engine coughed once. First warning. Fuel starvation beginning. He switched to reserve tank. Bought himself maybe 2 more minutes. The English Channel stretched endlessly below. Gray, cold, deadly. His grave. He thought about his brothers one final time, pictured their faces, Vincent's serious expression, Robert's quick smile, Charles's boyish energy. He hoped they would understand, hoped they would be proud, hoped Vincent would survive the war, hoped Robert and Charles would never have to fight, hoped his sacrifice meant something. Altitude 6,000 feet, 5,000, 4,000. Water very close now, details visible, waves, foam, current, the mathematics of survival approaching their final calculation. Garrison's engine coughed again, longer this time. The propeller slowed, RPM dropping, temperature still pegged at maximum, coolant completely gone. The cylinders were running dry, metal expanding, clearances disappearing. 3,000 feet. Hartwick began his final descent, lined up into the wind, prepared for water landing. The crew braced in crash positions, hands gripping whatever they could find, prayers whispered, lives flashing before eyes. 2,000 feet. Garrison's engine coughed a third time. The RPM dropped dangerously low, then recovered, then dropped again. Running on fumes now, seconds away from complete failure. 1,000 feet. He could see Hartwick's bomber ahead and slightly below, descending toward touchdown. The aircraft looked small against the vast expanse of gray water, fragile, doomed, but not alone. Garrison was with them, would be with them until the end. That was the promise, the code, the thing that mattered more than survival. 500 feet, Garrison's engine seized. The R-2800 Double Wasp, which had roared for 3 hours and 22 minutes, which had powered him through 73 missions, stopped. Complete silence except for wind. The propeller froze in place, no longer spinning, just dead weight, creating drag, pulling the nose down. Garrison pushed the stick forward, maintained airspeed. The P-47 became a glider, an 8-ton glider with the aerodynamic efficiency of a brick. He had perhaps 90 seconds before hitting the water. 90 seconds to prepare, to accept, to hope that his choice mattered. He keyed the radio one final time. Big friend, engine out, going in. See you in the water. Hartwick's voice came back immediately, emotional, raw. Copy, Iron Sentinel. And Eli, thank you for everything. My son will know your name. Garrison did not respond. He was too busy preparing for impact. Canopy unlocked, harness loose enough to escape but tight enough to protect. Mae West life vest inflated. Radio switched to emergency frequency, 300 feet. Below him, Hartwick's bomber descended toward touchdown. Any second now, 200 feet. Garrison set up his approach, nose slightly high, airspeed 90 knots. Not too fast, not too slow. The P-47 wanted to drop like a stone. He coaxed it into a shallow glide. 100 feet. He could see individual waves now, crests, troughs. The water was moving. Timing would be critical. 50 feet. He thought one last time about his brothers, about Hartwick's crew, about Nathaniel Brewster trapped in that ball turret, about whether any of this mattered. It had to matter. 20 feet. Garrison braced for impact. Then the P-47 Thunderbolt hit the English Channel at 90 knots, and Lieutenant Elliot Garrison's world exploded into cold and darkness and pain. The impact was worse than anything training had prepared him for. The P-47's engine hit first. 2,000 pounds of steel and aluminum driving downward like a meteorite. The Pratt & Whitney R-2800 that had been Garrison's faithful companion through 73 missions became an anchor, pulling, dragging, forcing the nose into the water with catastrophic violence. The aircraft did not skip, did not slide. It dove. Garrison's head snapped forward despite the harness. His helmet struck the instrument panel. The leather provided some protection, but not enough. Pain exploded across his forehead. Bright, sharp, overwhelming. Blood ran into his eyes immediately. Warm, sticky, blinding. He could not see. Water erupted through every seam in the fuselage, through the cowling, through the gun ports, through microscopic cracks in the canopy stressed by combat damage. The cockpit flooded in seconds. The water was 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature differential hit him like an electric shock. His chest seized, muscles locked. He could not breathe, could not think, could not move. The mammalian dive reflex triggered immediately. Blood vessels in his extremities constricted, heart rate dropped, body trying to preserve core temperature, trying to survive. But survival required action, and action required overcoming the paralysis of cold shock. The aircraft was sinking, fast. The nose pointed almost straight down now, 60 degrees from horizontal, water pressure crushing against the canopy, against his body, against everything. Garrison's hands fumbled for the canopy release. Emergency procedure. Pull the red handle. Jettison the canopy. Escape. The training was automatic, burned into muscle memory through hundreds of repetitions. Except his hands would not obey. The cold, the shock, the blow to his head. His fingers were numb, clumsy, alien appendages that refused commands. He pulled at the handle. Nothing happened. Water was up to his chest now, rising rapidly, cold beyond description, beyond anything he had ever experienced. Like knives made of ice stabbing every nerve ending simultaneously. Like fire that burned cold instead of hot. Panic clawed at the edges of his consciousness. The animal brain screaming for action, for escape, for air. The instinct that bypassed thought and demanded movement. Now, immediately, without hesitation. He forced it down, controlled his breathing, or tried to. Water climbed to his neck, his chin, his mouth. He gasped one final breath. Then the water covered his face. Darkness, pressure, cold. Silence except for the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Slowing, weakening. He pulled the canopy release again. Still nothing. Water pressure was holding it closed. The force of the water against the canopy was too great. The emergency jettison system could not overcome it. He needed to equalize the pressure. Let more water into the cockpit. Then the pressure would balance and the canopy would release. 3 seconds. An eternity. Water filled the cockpit completely. The pressure equalized. Garrison pulled the canopy release one more time. This time it moved. The emergency jettison system activated. Explosive bolts fired. The canopy separated from the fuselage with a metallic clunk he could hear even underwater. A sound that meant life, hope, possibility. Water rushed in through the opening, but that no longer mattered because now he could get out. Garrison released his harness. The straps fell away. He pushed himself up, tried to exit through the opening where the canopy had been. His flight suit was heavy with water. His boots were lead weights. Each one felt like it weighed 50 pounds. His parachute pack caught on something. Metal scraping against metal. Stuck. He was stuck. 10 feet underwater, aircraft sinking, parachute pack snagged on the cockpit rim, unable to move forward, unable to go back. Trapped. Garrison twisted violently, pulled with all his strength. The pack tore free, straps ripping, fabric shredding. He pushed through the opening, squeezed his shoulders past the canopy rail, kicked his legs. Free. The P-47 was already 20 feet below him, sinking rapidly, tail vertical, pointing upward like a tombstone. The name Iron Sentinel visible for one more second, then gone, swallowed by dark water. 8 tons of aircraft vanishing in less than 15 seconds. Garrison kicked toward the surface. His lungs burned. The urge to breathe was overwhelming, automatic, unstoppable. He held on, 15 feet, 20 feet, 25. How deep was he? His vision began to tunnel, darkness creeping in from the edges. Hypoxia, drowning, death reaching for him with cold fingers. Then his head broke the surface. Air, blessed air. He gasped, choked, coughed water from his lungs. Salt water burned his throat, his nose, his eyes. But it was air, life, the ability to breathe, the single most important thing in the universe at that moment. His Mae West life vest had automatically inflated during the underwater struggle. CO2 cartridge triggered by water pressure. Now it kept him afloat despite the weight of his gear. 40 pounds of soaked flight suit, 10-pound leather jacket, 5-pound boots. Without the vest, he would sink, drown, die. But he was floating, alive, breathing. The cold was already working on him. Hypothermia, the silent killer. Water temperature 50 degrees. Body temperature 98.6. The differential was 48 degrees. At that rate, core body temperature would drop approximately 1 degree every 2 to 3 minutes. After 15 minutes, core temperature 93 degrees. Mild hypothermia, confusion, loss of coordination. After 20 minutes, core temperature 90 degrees. Severe hypothermia, loss of consciousness likely. After 30 minutes, core temperature 86 degrees. Cardiac arrest. Death. The clock was running. Garrison turned in the water. Looked for the bomber. It was 300 yards away. He could see it clearly despite the blood in his eyes. The B-17 had ditched seconds before him. The impact had been violent but survivable. The fuselage had split open in several places. Water poured in through rents in the aluminum skin. The aircraft was sinking but slowly. Maybe 3 minutes before it went under completely. Men were scrambling out onto the wings. He counted heads. Difficult at this distance. 5 men visible on the left wing, 2 on the right. That was 7. One more appeared from the top the hatch. 8. 9 men on the crew. 8 visible. 1 missing. Brewster, still trapped in the ball turret beneath the fuselage. The turret was already underwater. Had been since impact. Brewster had been submerged for 30 seconds, maybe 40. Garrison began swimming, 300 yards. In calm water with no gear, he could swim that distance in perhaps 6 minutes. In 50-degree water, wearing a flight suit and boots with a head injury and shock setting in it would take much longer, if he made it at all. He forced his arms to move. Freestyle stroke, kick with his legs. The boots were impossibly heavy. Each kick required tremendous effort. His flight suit was soaked through, adding 30 pounds of water weight. His leather jacket was another 10 pounds. The Mae West vest kept him afloat but restricted his movement. 25 yards. His arms were already burning. His lungs gasped for air. Cold water splashed into his mouth with every breath. He was shaking violently now. Uncontrolled shivers. Stage 1 hypothermia. Core temperature dropping toward 95 degrees. 50 yards. He could see the bomber crew more clearly now. They were deploying orange life rafts from emergency storage compartments. The rafts inflated automatically. CO2 cartridges. Bright orange against gray water. Easy for rescue aircraft to spot. If rescue aircraft came, if they came in time, 75 yards. Garrison's stroke was weakening. His arms felt like lead. His legs barely kicked anymore. The cold was winning. Simple mathematics. Heat loss versus heat generation. The water was stealing thermal energy faster than his body could produce it. The equation had only one outcome. He was not going to make it to the raft. Then a voice cut through the sound of wind and waves. "Iron Sentinel over here, keep swimming." Garrison lifted his head, saw a man in the water 20 yards away, swimming toward him. Strong strokes, purposeful, life vest inflated, face pale but determined. Captain Russell Hartwick, commander of the B-17. The man Garrison had risked everything to save. Now swimming out to save him. "Almost there, Eli," Hartwick shouted. His voice was strained. He was hypothermic too, but functional, still thinking, still acting. "Don't quit on me." Garrison found reserves he did not know he possessed. 15 yards. 10. 5. Then Hartwick reached him, grabbed his flight suit, pulled him close. "I got you," Hartwick said. His face was pale, lips blue, shaking, but his eyes were clear, focused. "Come on, raft's right there." He pulled Garrison toward the nearest life raft. Orange rubber, 6 feet in diameter, round. David's salvation, other hands reached down, grabbed Garrison's arms, his collar, his belt, hauled him up over the inflated rubber side of the raft. He collapsed into the bottom, unable to move, shaking so violently his teeth chattered. Vision blurry, consciousness fading. Hartwick climbed in after him. Someone threw a blanket over Garrison. Thin, emergency issue, barely adequate, but better than nothing. The shaking continued, intensified. "Count off," Hartwick ordered. His voice was firm despite exhaustion. "I need a count." Voices responded. "Aldridge here." "Murphy present." "Donovan accounted for." "Finch made it." 4 voices from the first raft. Then from the second raft 20 yards away, more voices. 3 more men, 7 total survivors accounted for, plus Hartwick, plus Garrison. That was 9. But 10 men had been on that bomber. 9 crew plus Garrison made 10 total in the water. Only 9 voices had responded. Silence stretched for 3 seconds. Everyone understood. Someone was missing. They all knew who. "Brewster," Hartwick said quietly. The name hung in the cold air. "He's still in the ball turret." Garrison forced himself to speak through chattering teeth. "Can we get him out?" Aldridge shook his head. Water dripped from his face. His expression was hollow, defeated. "The fuselage is flooding. Aircraft will be under in 90 seconds. Maybe less. The ball turret is already submerged 10 feet deep." "We have to try," Garrison said, but his voice was weak, slurred. Hypothermia was affecting speech, cognitive function. His core temperature had dropped below 95 degrees. "Try what?" Aldridge's voice was harsh, desperate. Swim down in 50-degree water with no equipment. Whoever goes down there won't come back up. We'll lose 2 men instead of 1. Garrison tried to sit up, failed. His body would not obey commands. The hypothermia was too advanced. Motor control was failing. Confusion was setting in. Can't leave him, Garrison mumbled. Have to try. Hartwick put a hand on his shoulder, gentle, firm, final. Eli, you've done enough. You've done more than anyone could ask. Brewster knew the risks. We all do. Sometimes men die despite our best efforts. That's war. That's the price we pay. Not acceptable, Garrison whispered. But his voice was fading. His eyes were closing. His core temperature had dropped to 93 degrees. Stage 2 hypothermia. Consciousness was slipping away. The bomber was sinking rapidly now. The nose was already underwater. The tail was lifting. Water poured through every opening. Inside the flooding fuselage in the ball turret beneath the aircraft, Sergeant Nathaniel Brewster faced his final moments alone. The turret had filled with water within seconds of impact. Brewster had held his breath, had tried one last time to operate the jammed manual crank. The mechanism would not budge. Frozen, seized, useless. The plexiglass sphere was now his coffin, 6 feet in diameter, completely flooded, pressure equalizing as water filled every space. He was suspended in a transparent bubble of death, able to see out and able to see the surface above, the light, the life, everything he could not reach. He thought about his mother, her face, her voice, the way she had cried when he enlisted, the way she had said, "Be careful. Come home safe. I can't lose you too." Not after your father. He thought about his 5 siblings, his brothers and sisters who depended on the money he sent home every month. $20, sometimes $25 if he had been frugal. Enough to buy food, pay rent, keep the family together. What would they do now? How would they survive? He thought about his father, crushed under tons of coal in the darkness of a Pennsylvania mine. Dead at 43. Nathaniel had joined the military to escape that fate, to avoid dying in darkness underground, to breathe fresh air, to see the sky. Instead, he was dying in darkness underwater, in a sphere of guesses, able to see freedom but unable to reach it. The irony was not lost on him. Even now, even as his lungs burned and his vision darkened and his body convulsed with the desperate need to breathe, he had held his breath for 45 seconds, 50, 55. The world record was over 4 minutes, but that was in controlled conditions, with preparation, with hyperventilation, with pure oxygen. This was combat, shock, cold, fear, no preparation, no hyperventilation, no oxygen except what had been in his lungs when the water hit. 60 seconds. His chest was on fire. His diaphragm spasmed involuntarily. His body was trying to breathe, trying to override conscious control. The autonomic nervous system demanding air. Now, immediately. Survival instinct stronger than will. He held on. 65 seconds. 70. His vision was tunneling. Darkness creeping in from all sides. Hypoxia. Brain cells dying from lack of oxygen. Consciousness fading. 75 seconds. He could not hold on any longer. His body forced him to inhale. Involuntary. Automatic. Unstoppable. Water rushed into his lungs. Cold. Salt. Filling the alveoli. Preventing oxygen exchange. Drowning from the inside. He choked. Convulsed. Tried to cough but only drew in more water. The pain was incredible. Burning. Suffocating. Every instinct screaming in agony. Then suddenly the pain stopped. Darkness took him. Complete. Final. Nathaniel Brewster, 20 years old. Pennsylvania coal miner's son, ball turret gunner, was gone. On the surface in the life raft, the crew watched the bomber's tail disappear beneath the waves. Bubbles rose for several seconds, air escaping from the fuselage. Then nothing. Just gray water and gray sky and cold wind. Silence, except for the sound of waves and the chattering of teeth and the desperate shivers of hypothermia. He was a good kid, Murphy said quietly. His voice broke. Never complained, always did his job. Wrote letters to his mother every week. Talked about going home, about working on the farm, about taking care of his family. Hartwick nodded. Water dripped from his face. Might have been seawater, might have been tears. We'll make sure his family knows. We'll tell them he died doing his duty, that he was brave to the end, that he mattered. Will that help? Finch asked. His voice was hollow, distant. Will his mother care about bravery, or will she just care that her son is dead? No one answered, because they all knew the answer. Brewster would receive a telegram. Your son died in service to his country. The words would be formal, professional, respectful, empty. Nothing would fill the void. Nothing would bring him back. Nothing would change the mathematics. 9 men in 2 life rafts. 1 P-47 pilot who had given up everything to stay with them. 1 ball turret gunner who would never go home. The mathematics of war. Simple, brutal, final. Garrison's eyes were closed. His shaking was decreasing. That was not a good sign. It meant his body was running out of energy to generate heat. Stage 3 hypothermia approaching. Core temperature below 92 degrees. Confusion, disorientation, loss of consciousness imminent. Stay with us, Eli, Hartwick said. He rubbed Garrison's arms, trying to generate heat through friction, trying to keep blood flowing. Don't you dare die on me. Not after what you did to get us here. Cold, Garrison mumbled. His speech was slurred, barely intelligible. So, cold. Aldridge checked his watch. We've been into the water 8 minutes. Average survival time is 20 minutes before severe hypothermia. Rescue needs to get here fast, or we're all going to die. They'll come, Hartwick said with more confidence than he felt. Someone saw us go down. They'll send boats. We just have to hold on. But holding on was becoming increasingly difficult. The cold was relentless, unforgiving. It seeped through clothing, through skin, into muscle and bone and core, stealing heat, stealing life. 1 degree at a time. 10 minutes. Garrison's shaking was almost gone now. His core temperature had dropped to 91 degrees. His heart rate had slowed to 40 beats per minute. His breathing was shallow. 6 breaths per minute. His body was shutting down, conserving energy, preparing for death. Hartwick kept talking to him, kept trying to keep him conscious. Tell me about home, Eli. Tell me about your brothers, your family. Stay awake. Brothers, Garrison whispered. The word took tremendous effort. Vincent, Robert, Charles. Tell me about them. What are they like? Vincent was 18, draft age, going to war, soon. Wanted to keep him safe, win the war, before he had to fight. You're helping win it. Every mission, every bomber you escort home. That's one more strike against Germany. One step closer to victory. Didn't save Brewster. No, Hartwick said firmly, but you saved 8 others, my crew, me, my unborn son. That counts, Eli. That matters. Does it? Garrison's eyes were losing focus. Core temperature 90 degrees, critical threshold. 1 man dead because I couldn't save him. Listen to me, Hartwick said. His voice was intense, urgent. 1 man is dead because war is hell, and sometimes men die despite our best efforts. But 8 men are alive right now because you refused to leave us. You gave up everything. Your aircraft, nearly your life. You stayed when you should have left. That's not courage. That's something beyond courage. That's brotherhood. Garrison's eyes closed. Hartwick shook him. Stay awake, Eli. Don't go to sleep. Tired, Garrison mumbled. Just need to rest. No, you rest, you die. Keep your eyes open. But Garrison's eyes would not open. His body was shutting down. Core temperature dropping below 90 degrees. Cardiac arrest imminent. His heart was slowing dangerously. 30 beats per minute. 25, 20, 12 minutes. Garrison was unresponsive now. Still breathing, but barely. His pulse was weak, thready, irregular. His skin was pale, lips blue, eyes fixed and dilated. Hartwick continued rubbing his arms, his legs, trying desperately to generate heat, to keep blood flowing. But it was not working. Garrison was dying, slowly, inevitably. The cold was winning. Come on, Eli, Hartwick whispered. You didn't survive 73 missions to die in a life raft. Fight. Keep fighting. Your brothers need you. Your country needs you. I need you to live so I can thank you properly. Silence. Wind, waves, cold. Death circling like a patient predator. 15 minutes. Then someone heard it. A sound in the distance. Low, rhythmic, mechanical, growing louder. Engines. Aircraft, Finch shouted. I hear aircraft. Everyone looked up, scanned the gray sky there. Low on the horizon, 2 shapes. Fast boats cutting through the water. Approach speed 30 knots. RAF air-sea rescue launches. painted distinctive yellow and blue, purpose-built for recovering downed aircrew from the channel, equipped with medical supplies, blankets, hot tea, everything needed to treat hypothermia. "Over here," Murphy yelled. He grabbed an emergency flare from the raft's supply kit, pulled the ignition cord. The flare erupted in brilliant red smoke, impossible to miss against gray water and gray sky. The lead boat altered course, headed directly toward them, 90 seconds away. Maybe less. "Hold on, Eli," Hartwick said. His voice was rough with emotion. "Rescue's here. You're going to make it. Just hold on." But Garrison did not respond. His breathing had nearly stopped. 4 breaths per minute. His pulse was almost undetectable. 15 beats per minute. His core temperature was 89 degrees. His heart was failing. The RAF launch pulled alongside the first life raft. British sailors in thick coats and gloves reached down, pulled men aboard one by one, wrapped them in blankets. Someone handed out tin cups of hot sweet tea. Liquid warmth. Life. When they reached Garrison, one sailor took one look and his expression changed. Professional detachment replaced by urgent concern. "This one's critical," he shouted. "Severe hypothermia, possible cardiac arrest. Get him below immediately." 4 sailors lifted Garrison from the raft, carried him carefully to the boat's cabin, laid him on a padded bunk, began emergency warming procedures. Strip away wet clothing, wrap in dry blankets. Not too fast. Warming a hypothermia victim too quickly could cause heart failure. Gradual, controlled, careful. A medic checked vital signs. Pulse 18 beats per minute. Respiration 3 breaths per minute. Core temperature estimated at 89 degrees. Critical, but stable for the moment, not getting worse, not getting better. Hovering at the edge. The boat's engines roared to life. Full speed toward the English coast. Portsmouth Naval Hospital. 40 minutes away. Garrison had to survive 40 more minutes. At his current rate of heat loss, that was far from certain. Hartwick sat next to Garrison's bunk, held the unconscious pilot's hand. "You did it, Eli," he said quietly. "You got us home. 9 men are alive because of you. 8 from my crew. 1 fighter pilot who refused to calculate the odds. Don't you dare die now. Your brothers need you. My son needs to know your name. I need you to live." Garrison's lips moved slightly. No sound came out. But Hartwick thought he might have tried to speak, tried to say something. What Hartwick would never know. The boat raced across the channel. White spray, rough water. Every minute counted. Every second mattered. In the cabin, the medic monitored Garrison's vital signs continuously. 20 minutes into the voyage, pulse 22 beats per minute. Respiration 4 breaths per minute. Core temperature 90 degrees. Slight improvement. The warming was working. Slowly, but working. 30 minutes, pulse 28. Respiration 5. Temperature 91 degrees. More improvement. Still critical. But the trajectory was positive. 35 minutes into the voyage, Garrison's eyes opened. Unfocused. Confused. Disoriented. He tried to speak. Failed. Tried again. "Did we make it?" His voice was barely a whisper. Hoarse. Weak. Hartwick leaned close. Relief flooded through him. "Yes, Eli, we made it. We made. You saved us. All 8 of us. We're going home." "Brewster?" Silence. Then Hartwick shook his head slowly. "He didn't make it. I'm sorry. The ball turret. He couldn't get out." Garrison's eyes closed again. A single tear ran down his cheek. "One lost. My fault." "No," Hartwick said firmly. His voice was intense. Certain. "What's your fault? You did everything humanly possible. More than anyone could ask. Brewster knew the risks. We all do. You saved 8 lives today, Eli. 8 families that won't get a telegram saying their husband or son or brother is gone. That's what matters. That's what counts." Garrison did not respond. He had lost consciousness again. But his vital signs continued to improve. Pulse 32, temperature 91.5, respiration 6, still critical, but stable, moving in the right direction. 42 minutes after rescue, the boat docked at Portsmouth. Ambulances were waiting. Garrison was loaded onto a stretcher. Rushed to the hospital with lights and sirens. Priority patient, critical condition, severe hypothermia, head trauma, possible complications. In the emergency ward, doctors and nurses swarmed. Intravenous lines established. Warming blankets applied. Heated oxygen administered. Medications given. The organized chaos of trauma medicine. For 2 hours, the medical team fought to stabilize him, fought to bring his core temperature back to safe levels, fought to save his life, and slowly, gradually, he responded. Temperature climbed to 93 degrees, 95, 97. Heart rate normalized to 60 beats per minute. Breathing steadied at 12 breaths per minute. Blood pressure stabilized. Color returned to his face. By midnight, his condition had improved to serious but stable. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. He would live. Barring complications, he would recover fully. The next morning, Garrison woke in a hospital bed. Clean sheets, warm blankets, sunlight streaming through a window. His head throbbed. His body ached. Every muscle hurt. But he was alive. A nurse appeared at his bedside. Young, pretty, professional. She smiled when she saw his eyes open. "Welcome back, Lieutenant. You gave us quite a scare." "Where am I?" His voice was rough, throat raw from salt water and the breathing tube they had used during treatment. "Portsmouth Naval Hospital. You've been here 16 hours. How do you feel?" "Like I drowned." "You nearly did. Severe hypothermia. Core temperature was 89 degrees when they brought you in. Another few minutes and—" She did not finish the sentence. Did not need to. Garrison tried to sit up, failed. His body was too weak, too exhausted. "The bomber crew. Captain Hartwick. Are they—" "They're all fine. 8 survivors. They were treated and released this morning. Mild hypothermia, minor injuries. Nothing serious. One of them left something for you." She handed him an envelope. Garrison opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a handwritten note on lined paper. The handwriting was neat, precise. Engineer's script. "Eli, no words can express what you did for us yesterday. You gave up everything to stay with us. You risked your life to save men you barely knew. You refused to calculate the odds. You just stayed. That's not courage. That's something beyond courage. I don't have a word for it. My son will be born in January. I'm naming him Elliot. After you. So he'll always remember the man who made sure his father came home. So he'll know what real brotherhood looks like. I'll never forget what you did. None of us will. Thank you for everything. Russell Hartwick." Garrison read the note twice, then set it on the bedside table, closed his eyes, thought about Nathaniel Brewster. 20 years old, Pennsylvania coal miner's son, trapped in a ball turret beneath a sinking bomber. Dead. 1 lost. 8 saved. Was it worth it? Was one man's death an acceptable price for 8 men's survival? The mathematics were simple. 8 is greater than 1. Therefore, the outcome was positive. Net gained 7 lives, but mathematics did not account for Mrs. Brewster. For 5 siblings who would grow up without their brother. For the letters that would never be written. For the money that would never arrive. For the future that would never happen. The mathematics were accurate, but they were incomplete. They quantified the outcome without measuring the content. Garrison did not know if it was worth it. Could not know. The question had no objective answer. Only subjective ones, different for every person who considered it. Mrs. Brewster would say no. The 8 survivors would say yes. Future historians would debate it. But none of them would ever truly know. All Garrison knew was that he had made a choice, had stayed with his brothers when the mathematics said he should leave, had given everything for a chance to save them. Not a guarantee, just a chance. And 8 men had lived. 1 had died. Those were the numbers. Those were the facts. Make of them what you will. 3 days later, Garrison stood at attention in dress uniform at Thorpe Abbott's airfield. His head was bandaged. His body was weak. But he stood straight, shoulders back, eyes forward, the way soldiers stand when ceremony demands it. The base commander stood before him, an older man, colonel, graying hair, tired eyes, too many funerals, too many casualty reports, too many telegrams sent to families. He read from a citation. His voice was formal, professional, but there was respect beneath the words. For extraordinary heroism in combat against enemy forces, Lieutenant Elliot Garrison, while serving as fighter escort, engaged superior numbers of enemy aircraft on multiple occasions, expended all ammunition in defense of a damaged bomber. When his own aircraft suffered engine failure over the English Channel, Lieutenant Garrison voluntarily remained with the distressed bomber to improve rescue probability. Lieutenant Garrison deliberately ditched his aircraft to stay with the bomber crew. His actions directly resulted in the survival of 8 aircrew members. Lieutenant Garrison's courage, skill, and devotion to duty reflect the highest credit upon himself and the United States Army Air Forces. The commander stepped forward, pinned a medal on Garrison's chest, the Distinguished Service Cross, second highest military decoration after the Medal of Honor. A bronze cross suspended from a ribbon, striped red, white, and blue. The metal was heavy, cold metal against his uniform. Hartwick and his crew stood nearby in formation, all 8 survivors, saluting. When the ceremony concluded, they approached. One by one, they shook Garrison's hand, said thank you in voices rough with emotion, promised they would never forget. But their eyes kept drifting to the empty space where the 9th man should have been standing. Brewster's position, ball turret gunner, gone. The ghost in the formation, the price of survival. That evening, Garrison sat alone in the officers' club, a glass of whiskey in front of him, untouched. He stared at the amber liquid and thought about missions and mathematics and the price of brotherhood. An older pilot approached, a major with gray hair and tired eyes and too many missions behind him. He sat down across from Garrison without asking permission. Garrison Wright heard about what you did. Hell of a thing. Garrison nodded but did not speak. Lost a man, though, the major continued. His voice was matter-of-fact. Not cruel, just honest. That always hurts. First one under your escort. Yes. Won't be the last. Not in this war. You'll lose more. We all do. That's the job. Does it get easier? Garrison asked. He was not sure he wanted the answer, but he needed to ask. The major considered the question. Took a drink. No, never gets easier. Every man you lose takes a piece of you with him. But you learn to live with it. You learn that sometimes men die despite your best efforts. And you learn that saving 8 is better than saving none. The mathematics aren't pretty, but they're honest. I keep thinking about his mother, his family, what they'll feel when they get the telegram. They'll feel grief, loss, anger, all the things families feel when they lose someone. But eventually they'll also feel pride, because their son died serving his country, died doing his duty. That matters. That means something. Does it really mean something? Or is that just what we tell ourselves to make the grief bearable? The major finished his drink, stood, looked down at Garrison with eyes that had seen too much death. That's a question every soldier has to answer for himself, Lieutenant. But I'll tell you this, you saved 8 men yesterday. 8 families that didn't get a telegram. 8 mothers who still have sons. 8 wives who still have husbands. 8 children who still have fathers. That's not nothing. That's everything. He walked away, leaving Garrison alone with his thoughts and his whiskey and the weight of a bronze medal on his chest. The war continued. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Garrison flew mission after mission. 73 became 80. 80 became 90. 90 became 100. 100 missions. The magic number. Different groups had different requirements. 25, 30, 50. But 100 was legendary. The mark of a pilot who had survived everything, beaten every odd, lived when so many others died. On his 100th mission, Garrison escorted a formation of B-17s to Berlin, the deepest penetration into Germany yet, the most dangerous target, the heart of the Reich. But this time, everyone came home. All bombers, all escorts, 0 losses. A perfect mission, the kind you remember because they are so rare, the kind that makes you believe survival is possible. That maybe, just maybe, you will live through this war. After landing, Garrison climbed down from his P-47. The aircraft was battered, patched, rebuilt. Barely recognizable as the same machine that had left the factory, but still flying, still fighting, like its pilot. Damaged but functional. His crew chief, Sergeant Malone, counted the new holes. 15, including 3 cannon strikes that had somehow missed critical systems. Lieutenant, this bird is indestructible, just like you. Garrison smiled, tired, weary. Nothing's indestructible, Malone. We're just borrowing time. Eventually the debt comes due. Not today, sir. Today you're alive. Today you finished 100 missions. That counts for something. Maybe. That evening, Garrison wrote a letter. His 100th combat mission had earned him rotation back to the States. Training duty. Stateside assignment. A chance to go home. To see his brothers. To rest. But first he had a letter to write, a debt to pay, a promise to keep. Mrs. Brewster, you don't know me, but I knew your son. I flew escort for his bomber on October 12, 1943, the day he died. I wanted you to know that Nathaniel was brave to the end. When the bomber ditched in the English Channel, he was trapped in the ball turret. There was no way to get him out, no way to save him. He faced death with courage and dignity. He never complained, never panicked. He died so his crewmates could escape. That's the mark of a true soldier. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. I tried. We all tried. But sometimes, despite our best efforts, men die. I wanted you to know that his sacrifice mattered. 8 men came home because your son did his duty. Their families will never know Nathaniel's name. But I will remember. I'll remember for the rest of my life. Your son was a hero. I'm proud to have flown alongside him. With deepest sympathy, Lieutenant Elliot Garrison. He mailed the letter the next day, never received a response, but he hoped it brought some small comfort, some small measure of peace to a mother who had lost her son. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe Day. Germany surrendered unconditionally. The killing stopped. The machinery of war ground to a halt. Across England and America and France, people celebrated, danced in the streets, kissed strangers, cried with relief and joy and exhaustion. But for the men who had fought, the celebration was muted. Subdued, they had seen too much death, lost too many friends, carried too many memories. Victory felt less like triumph and more like survival, like reaching the end of a marathon you never wanted to run. Garrison returned to New Jersey in June 1945. His brothers met him at the train station. Vincent was in uniform now, 20 years old, assigned to occupation duty in Germany, too late for combat. Thank God for that. Robert was 17, Charles was 15, both too young for the draft now that the war was over. They embraced, said little. There was too much to say and no words sufficient to say it. The farmhouse looked smaller than Garrison remembered. The fields looked the same. The work was still there, waiting, always waiting. Garrison fell back into the rhythm of farm life, planting, harvesting, mending fences, repairing equipment. The work was hard, physical, exhausting. But it was clean work, honest work. No one shot at you while you plowed a field. No one died when you made a mistake. He never married. Friends asked why. He had no answer, or rather, he had too many answers. Perhaps he could not bear the thought of leaving a widow, of creating another Mrs. Hartwick waiting for a telegram. Perhaps he was too damaged, too haunted. Perhaps he simply preferred solitude. Whatever the reason, he lived alone, worked alone, kept his own counsel. But once a year, every October 12th, he made a trip, took the train to Pennsylvania, to a small mining town where coal dust stained everything gray, to a modest house on a street of identical modest houses. He never knocked on the door, never introduced himself, just left an envelope on the porch, inside money, always cash, never a check, $200, sometimes $300, enough to help with bills, to buy school supplies, to ease the burden of raising 5 children alone. Mrs. Brewster never knew who left the money, never saw the man who approached in early morning before dawn, never connected the anonymous gift to the letter she had received in 1943 from a pilot named Garrison. But she accepted the money gratefully, used it to feed her children, to clothe them, to send them to school. And every October 12th, when the envelope appeared, she would stand on her porch and look down the empty street and whisper thank you to whoever was listening. This continued for 53 years. Garrison also maintained correspondence with Russell Hartwick. Letters arrived every few months, updates about life, about family, about the son who carried Garrison's name. Elliot Hartwick Jr. was born on January 15, 1944. Healthy, 8 pounds, his father was there for the birth, held his son for the first time, cried, thought about the fighter pilot who had made that moment possible. The letters came regularly, photos enclosed, a baby in a christening gown, a toddler learning to walk, a boy holding a baseball bat, a teenager in a cap and gown at high school graduation, a young man in a college football uniform. Every letter ended the same way. Thank you, Eli, for everything, for giving me this life, this family, this chance we'll never forget. Garrison kept every letter, every photo, stored them in a box in his bedroom. Sometimes late at night, he would take out the box, look at the photos, read the letters. Remember the day when the mathematics of survival had been uncertain and the price of brotherhood had been measured in fuel and altitude in one man's life. In 1987, Garrison received an unexpected phone call, a German-accented voice, elderly, formal. Mr. Garrison, my name is Werner Müller. I was a Staffelkapitän with Jagdgeschwader 26 during the war. I believe we met in a manner of speaking on October 12, 1943. Garrison was silent for a moment, processing, then he understood. You were one of the pilots attacking the B-17. Yes, I led one of the formations. We lost 3 aircraft trying to bring down that bomber. Your flying that day was exceptional. After the war, I learned the pilot's name, Elliot Garrison. I wanted to contact you to say that if you had been German, you would have been awarded the Knight's Cross without question. You were a warrior of the highest order. I was doing my job. No, Mueller said firmly. Many pilots do their job. You did something more. You stayed with that bomber when you should have left. You sacrificed your aircraft to remain with your comrades. That is not duty. That is honor. That is brotherhood. We Germans understand such things. I wanted you to know that your enemy respected you, admired you. You fought with courage and skill. Garrison did not know how to respond. What did you say to a man who had tried to kill you 44 years ago, who had fought on the opposite side of a war that had consumed millions of lives? Thank you, he said finally, for the call, for the words. They mean more than you know. I am 72 years old now, Mueller continued. I have not much time left. I wanted to say this before I die. War is a terrible thing. It makes enemies of men who might have been friends. But even in war, honor exists. You had it. I recognized it then. I recognize it now. Farewell, Lieutenant Garrison. May you find peace. The line went dead. Garrison stood holding the phone for a long time, thinking about war and honor and enemies who respected each other despite trying to kill each other, thinking about how strange and terrible and profound human conflict could be. In November 1996, Russell Hartwick died. Heart attack. Sudden, 79 years old. He had lived a full life, taught history at a high school in Illinois for 30 years, raised 3 children, watched 5 grandchildren grow, died surrounded by family. Garrison attended the funeral, sat in the back row, said nothing. But when Elliot Hartwick Jr., now 52 years old, approached him after the service, Garrison shook his hand firmly. My father told me about you, the younger Hartwick said. His voice was his father's voice, strong, steady, certain. Told me I was named after the bravest man he ever knew. Told me that on October 12, 1943, you saved his life. Saved 8 men, lost 1. That it haunted you for the rest of your life. Oh, it did, Garrison admitted. Still does. My father also said that you did everything humanly possible, that sometimes despite our best efforts, men die, and that saving 8 is better than saving none. He believed that with his whole heart. He wanted you to believe it too. Garrison was quiet for a moment. Then he said, your father was a good man, a wise man. I'm glad he made it home. I'm glad you got to know him. I had him for 52 years because of you. My children had their grandfather because of you. That's your legacy, Mr. Garrison. Not the one man you couldn't save, but the 3 generations you helped create. My children, my grandchildren. They exist because you stayed with that bomber. Garrison nodded slowly. Perhaps that was true. Perhaps legacy was not measured in losses but in survival. Not in the one who died, but in the many who lived. Perhaps. On March 3, 1998, Elliot Garrison died in his sleep. He was 78 years old. The cause was heart failure. Peaceful, quiet, the way old soldiers hope to die. Not in violence, not in pain, just sleep, and then nothing. His funeral was held at a small church in New Jersey. Family attended, Vincent, now 73, Robert, 70, Charles, 68. All 3 had survived the war. All 3 had lived full lives. Married, had children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. The family farm had prospered, expanded, become a source of pride for the community. Also in attendance were 6 elderly men, strangers to the family. They arrived together, all in their late 70s, moving slowly, walking with canes, but standing straight, shoulders back, military bearing despite advanced age. They introduced themselves: Franklin Aldridge, Silas Murphy, Hayes Donovan, Graham Finch, and 2 others, relatives of crew members who had not survived the decades since the war. We flew with your brother, Aldridge told Vincent. October 12, 1943, he saved our lives. We wanted to pay our respects. They stood at Garrison's casket, saluted, military salute, arms straight, hands rigid, the salute of soldiers honoring a fallen comrade. Then Aldridge spoke. His voice was old, cracked, but clear, strong beneath the age. Elliot Garrison saved our lives on October 12, 1943. He gave up everything to stay with us. His aircraft, nearly his life. He didn't do it for medals or recognition. He did it because that's who he was, A man who understood that some things matter more than survival. Brotherhood, duty, honor. We owed him a debt we could never repay. The best we could do was live good lives, raise good families, remember what he did, and pass that memory to our children and grandchildren. So they'll know what real courage looks like. Eli will never forget. Rest easy, brother. They stood in silence for 5 minutes, then departed, back to their lives, their families, their memories. The headstone was simple. Garrison had requested that. No military honors, no ceremony, just a name, dates, and one line: he stayed with his brothers. In a small town in Pennsylvania, an elderly woman named Margaret Brewster sat in her living room. She was 94 years old now, widow for 57 years, mother of 5, grandmother of 13, great-grandmother of 23. She had received notification of Garrison's death from one of her sons. He had read about it in a veteran's newsletter, had recognized the name, had called his mother. "That was the pilot, wasn't it?" her son had asked. "The one who wrote you the letter about Nathaniel? The one who tried to save him?" "Yes," Margaret had said. Her voice was quiet, distant. That was him. Now she sat in her chair and thought about the man she had never met. The pilot who had written her a letter 55 years ago, who had apologized for not saving her son, who had called Nathaniel a hero. She stood, walked slowly to a drawer, retrieved a box. Inside were letters, photos, memories, the accumulated artifacts of a long life. She found what she was looking for: an envelope, yellowed with age. The letter from Lieutenant Garrison, written in 1943. She read it again, for perhaps the 100th time. The words were familiar, but they still carried weight, still mattered. Then she found a piece of paper, a pen. Her hands shook with age as she wrote, but the words came easily. She had been composing this letter in her mind for decades. "Lieutenant Garrison, you wrote to me 55 years ago about my son, Nathaniel. You said you were sorry you couldn't save him. I want you to know that I never blamed you. Not for 1 second, not for one moment. You gave up everything to try. You stayed with that bomber when you should have left. You risked your life for 9 men you barely knew. That's more than anyone could ask. My Nathaniel died doing his duty. So did you in your own way. You spent 53 years trying to make up for one loss by helping one family. My family. I didn't know it was you leaving money on my porch every October. But I know now. Your brother told my son told me, and I want you to know it mattered. It mattered so much. My children had food and clothes and school because of you. They grew up to be good people. They raised good children of their own. 23 grandchildren and great-grandchildren exist today because of what you did. Both on October 12th, 1943, and every October 12th after. That's your legacy, Lieutenant. Not the one man you couldn't save, but the 23 lives you helped create. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for trying to save my son. Thank you for helping my family survive. Thank you for being the kind of man who understood that some debts are paid not with words but with actions. With 53 years of actions, may you rest in peace knowing you did enough, more than enough. You were a hero twice over. Once on that day in 1943, and once in all the years that followed, with deepest gratitude and respect, Margaret Brewster." She addressed the letter to Garrison's family, found the address from the obituary, mailed it with shaking hands. 3 weeks later, Margaret Brewster died in her sleep, 94 years old, a coal miner's widow who had lost a son but raised 5 others, who had survived poverty and war and grief, who had never forgotten the fighter pilot who tried to save her boy, who had never forgotten the anonymous gifts that had helped her family survive. At her funeral, her children opened the letter she had left for them. Instructions, simple, clear. Every October 12th, the letter said, "Leave flowers at the grave of Lieutenant Elliot Garrison. He saved your uncle. He saved our family. We owe him everything. Never forget." And they did not forget. Today at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado, there is a museum. Inside the museum is a display, carefully maintained, meticulously preserved, a testament to history and sacrifice and the bonds that define warriors. The centerpiece is a P-47 Thunderbolt, restored to pristine condition, painted olive drab and gray. 8 machine guns visible in the wings. The name Iron Sentinel stenciled below the cockpit in white letters. 26 kill markers painted on the fuselage, small swastikas, each one representing a German aircraft destroyed. The placard beside the aircraft is large, detailed. It reads P-47D, Thunderbolt, serial number 428066, flown by Lieutenant Elliot Garrison, 56th Fighter Group, United States Army Air Forces. 100 combat missions, 38 confirmed aerial victories. Distinguished Service Cross recipient. On October 12, 1943, Lieutenant Garrison escorted a damaged B-17 bomber for 90 miles through enemy territory. He engaged approximately 20 German fighters in multiple engagements. When his fuel was exhausted over the English Channel, he voluntarily ditched his aircraft to remain with the bomber crew. 8 men survived, 1 was lost. Lieutenant Garrison never forgot Sergeant Nathaniel Brewster, the ball turret gunner, who died that day. For 53 years, Lieutenant Garrison anonymously supported Brewster's family. Every October 12th, he sent money to help raise Brewster's 5 siblings. He never sought recognition, never told anyone. He simply acted, quietly, consistently, for over half a century. This aircraft represents not just military victory, but the bonds of brotherhood that define the warrior spirit. It represents the choice to stay when logic says leave, to sacrifice when calculation says survive, to give everything for brothers you barely know. That is the essence of the warrior ethos. That is the legacy of Lieutenant Elliot Garrison. Every year on October 12th, someone leaves a wreath at that display. Fresh flowers, orange and white, the colors of the Air Force Academy. The card attached to the wreath always says the same thing for Eli and Nate, brothers who showed us what courage really means. The museum staff have tried to identify who leaves the wreath, but the person comes early, before the museum opens, before anyone arrives, and leaves before questions can be asked. Perhaps it is one of the survivors, Aldridge or Murphy or one of the others growing older but still remembering. Perhaps it is one of their children or grandchildren, carrying on a tradition they learned from parents who learned from survivors who learned from experience that some debts transcend generations. Or perhaps it is one of Brewster's relatives, nieces or nephews, or great-nieces or great-nephews, honoring the uncle they never met and the pilot who tried to save him and the bond between them that define what brotherhood means. Whoever it is, they come every year. Without fail, rain or shine, snow or heat, the wreath appears, the flowers are fresh, the card is handwritten. The tradition continues, because some stories must be remembered, some sacrifices must be honored, some examples must be preserved, so that future generations understand what courage looks like, what brotherhood costs, what warriors do when the mathematics say leave, but the heart says stay. There is one more element to the museum display, a small glass case beside the P-47. Inside the case are artifacts, personal items, letters, photos, the tangible remnants of lives lived and sacrifices made. One letter is displayed prominently, framed, protected. The paper is yellowed with age. The ink has faded slightly, but the words are still legible, still powerful. It is the letter Garrison wrote to Mrs. Brewster in 1943, the original, donated to the museum by the Brewster family after Margaret's death. They felt it belonged here, where people could see it, read it, understand what it represented. Mrs. Brewster, you don't know me, but I knew your son. The letter continues. Every word visible, every apology, every promise, every expression of respect for a young man who died doing his duty. Beside it is another letter, the one Margaret Brewster wrote to Garrison's family after his death, also framed, also preserved. Lieutenant Garrison, you wrote to me 55 years ago about my son, Nathaniel. The 2 letters, side by side, separated by 55 years, connected by loss and respect, and the strange bond between a pilot and a mother who never met, but who understood each other perfectly. Visitors to the museum stop at this display, read the letters, look at the photos, study the aircraft, and many of them cry, not from sadness alone, but from recognition. Recognition that human beings are capable of extraordinary things, that warriors can be gentle, that strength can be expressed through kindness, that the greatest victories are sometimes the ones no one sees. That brotherhood is not a word. It is an action, a choice, a commitment that transcends calculation and logic and self-interest. It is staying with a damaged bomber when you should leave. It is ditching your aircraft to improve rescue odds. It is spending 53 years supporting a family you never knew, to honor a man you tried but failed to save. That is brotherhood. That is courage. That is what it means to be a warrior in the truest sense. Not the ability to kill, but the willingness to sacrifice. Not the capacity for violence, but the commitment to protect. not the skill to destroy, but the strength to give. Elliot Garrison and Nathaniel Brewster. Two names that should be spoken with reverence. Two men from different backgrounds who met for a few hours on a terrible day and whose lives became forever intertwined. One lived 78 years, one died at 20, one received a medal, one received a telegram, one went home, one stayed in the water. But both were heroes, both understood duty, both exemplified the code that warriors have lived by for millennia. The code that says some bonds matter more than survival, that brotherhood is sacred, that you never leave a man behind, even if staying means dying. That is their legacy, not just the mission, not just the statistics. 8 saved, 1 lost. But the principle underlying the choice, the willingness to give everything for brothers they barely knew. That is what we owe them. To remember, to honor, to tell their story so that it never fades. So that future generations understand that heroes are not superhuman. They are human beings who make extraordinary choices in ordinary moments. They are fighter pilots who turn back when they should rest, who stay with bombers when they should leave, who ditch in freezing water rather than abandon their brothers, who spend 53 years paying a debt that no one asked them to pay. They are ball turret gunners who face death with courage, who do not complain when trapped, who think of family in their final moments, who die so others can live. They are men like Elliot Garrison and Nathaniel Brewster. Ordinary men who became extraordinary through choice, through sacrifice, through understanding that some things matter more than survival. May their memory endure as long as human beings value courage, as long as warriors understand that leaving no man behind is not just a slogan. It is a sacred trust, a promise made not with words but with actions, with fuel and ammunition and aircraft and life itself. They gave everything. The least we can do is remember. And so we do, every October 12th, with wreaths and flowers and stories told to children who tell them to their children who will tell them to theirs. The story of 90 miles, 9 men, 1 decision that defined what it means to be a warrior. The story of brotherhood, of sacrifice, of honor. The story of men who understood that some mathematics are measured not in numbers but in bonds, not in quantities but in commitments, not in calculations but in choices. The story of Elliot Garrison and Nathaniel Brewster. Heroes, brothers, eternal. If this story has moved you, honor their memory. Tell it to others, share it with family and friends. Make sure these acts of heroism are never